Good morning. My name's Dave Brown. I think some of you know me. Some of you might not know me. I'm President and CEO of the Capital District YMCA, and my job is to welcome you all here this morning. So thank you for coming out on your day off from school to be part of this program. And we got a great program for you this morning. And I just want to recognize some folks here. First, I want to recognize and acknowledge our District Attorney, David Suarez, and we got to give him a resounding welcome because without him this morning, we wouldn't be here because he sponsored this event. And part of that sponsorship, we have some great prizes. I think you all got a raffle ticket, so somebody's going to be a winner here. We got a PS4 and some other great prizes for you. We also have some friends here with us today. We have Lori Rayon from Spark, along with Joan Killian from Spark. Let's give them a warm welcome. We have some friends of ours here from the Hope House sitting over there in the corner. Let's give them a warm welcome for being here. I think they're going to be part of your table discussions today. And my job here is to introduce to you our facilitator who's come out this morning, Mr. King McElvey, who's a counselor at Hope House. He's going to be talking to you today and telling you a little bit more about the program. And before I bring him up, I hope you guys have a great time this morning, and I hope you have fun later on at the march. So thanks again for coming out, and let's give King McElvey a warm welcome here to the podium.
Good morning. How y'all doing? Come on now. How are y'all doing? Okay. It's a little cold outside, huh? Just a little cold. Y'all don't have to go to school, right? So since you didn't have to go to school, what better way to be than be here with us this morning? Plus, I know you guys got a raffle ticket and you want to get one of those lovely prizes that are over there. And only a couple of y'all are going to win. So pray, hold on to your tickets, and we're going to have a nice morning this morning. So, we're here to talk about opioids. Is everybody aware of what that is? I know y'all teenagers, so y'all should know this kind of stuff. Is that correct? Let me ask you guys a question. How many of you have been affected by, know someone who may have used opiates or died from opiates? Can I get a bunch of you to stand up? Okay. So what you're telling me is that the rest of you don't know anybody, have never seen anyone, have anyone in your family that has used or been affected by opioid use. Is that correct? So that means we're going to have a very good learning day today in regards to how devastating the disease of addiction and opiates can be used. You folks can sit down. Thank you. My name is King McElvey, and I am an associate counselor at a rehabilitation house called Hope House. And what Hope House is designed to do is to help men and women with children who have some type of drug addiction to try to get their life back together. I was asked to be a part of this amazing situation for you teenagers by, of course, Mr. Orville Abrams and Mr. David Graham, who also is very instrumental in doing stuff around the city of Albany. So if we can give them a hand, because they don't want to know, they don't want anybody to know who they are. That's Mr. Orville Abraham over there, the gentleman with the glasses on top of his head. So, I'd like to know if you guys will have questions, that you hold them at least until the initial person finishes talking, so that you can direct your questions to that person specifically. Is that okay? You sure? Is everybody else sure? Okay, good. So, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to start, but I guess I've already started. So, I am going to introduce the folks that are at this lovely panel. Some of you already know their names, and I think we'll start ladies first. This is how I was raised. Even though the man in the middle is pretty important, but I'm pretty sure he would like the ladies to go first. Thanks, Dave. That's what I was looking for. So,
is this just an introduction, or?
It is your introduction.
Okay, well, my name is Lori, and I'm a nurse currently working at Spark in Guilderland. Spark is St. Peter's Addiction Recovery Center, and we are a 28-day inpatient program for people who abuse drugs and alcohol. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about addiction, what the definition of addiction is. Before I do that, I'd like to ask, who in here thinks that addiction is a disease? Okay, you guys are smart. How many people are saying that because they know that's the right thing they're supposed to say, but they don't really understand how it could possibly be a disease? That's some honest people, at least. So the definition of addiction is a chronic, progressive, relapsing disease, and it's characterized by a compulsive desire to use drugs despite negative consequences. So chronic means it's long-term, it does not go away. Progressive means it gets worse and worse the more you use. Relapsing, unfortunately, is part of the disease. A person can get clean, they can be clean for many years and then relapse, and that can happen multiple times. It is a disease, and I really want people to understand that addiction is a disease. It affects the brain structure and function, the way your brain works, and it affects the critical part of your brain that is important in decision-making, judgment, learning, memory, and behavioral control. So when you see your friends, your family members, people making foolish decisions, and you're just thinking, how can they possibly do that? How can my parent choose that over me? How can my loved one, just spend all of our money? How can they make these decisions? The drug is actually affecting the part of their brain that makes good decisions. It hijacks that part of the brain. So right now, as of this month, I learned from the NIDA website. NIDA is the National Institute of Drug Abuse. You can get a lot of good information on that website. They said that there are 130 people dying every day in America from opioid-related causes. In 2017, there were over 70,000 drug overdose deaths. The majority of those deaths were from opioid use. The CDC estimates that half of the opioid deaths are from prescription opioids. So those are medications that you get from your doctor. A lot of people think that if a medication is prescribed by a doctor that it's safe, it's okay. I work, well, I don't work with her anymore, but I worked with a Dr. Ferrari who actually told me that a person can become addicted to opiate pills in 5 days. And I can speak from personal experience that I've had surgery several times and have been given bottles of opiates, and I barely needed them. I needed a couple of pills and I had a whole bottle of pills left over. So, and I do have an addiction in my background and family background, but not to opiates. And if those pills are in the wrong hands, that can just be the start of a lifelong problem with drugs. Joan and I work at Spark, and we have many people who come in who were prescribed medication for surgery for pain, and now there are patients at Spark. You know, they got started and they don't stop. They turn to heroin, and it just continues. I guess because I'm speaking to more young people, I wasn't sure exactly who the audience would be, but prevention is so important, and I just want to tell you guys, or ask you guys to please, please don't pick up that drug the first time. I remember I used to abuse cocaine. I had heroin offered to me. I didn't know it until the last minute that it was heroin. My father had told me not to do heroin, and that is actually what kept me from trying that drug. At the last possible minute, I almost did it, and I didn't because my father had told me not to do that. So, I'm not your parent, but I'm just asking you, please don't ever do opiates. Don't ever try it. You will like it, and you will like it. I mean, unfortunately, that's the truth. Opiates release 2 to 10 times the amount of dopamine in your brain that you would experience from a normally pleasurable activity. Dopamine makes you feel really good. It's something that your brain releases if you have a good meal, if you do something really fun, something that you really enjoy, your brain releases dopamine. When you do drugs of abuse release 2 to 10 times the amount of dopamine in your brain. And that is such an incredible feeling that you want to repeat that feeling over and over again. So you just keep going back to that over and over. So prevention, I really believe, is key. You know, doing well in school, that's really important. Poor academic performance has been shown to be a risk factor for increasing drug abuse, so I really encourage you to really try to do well in school. Learning coping skills, learning how to deal with your emotions without turning to drugs is really important. That's a big problem with a lot of our patients. They've never learned coping skills. So learning how to deal with your emotions. You know, if you are really upset about something, find someone to talk to. You need to find a way to deal with those emotions without turning to a drug, because once you start turning to the drug, it just continues, and that's going to be your coping skill. And it starts off with maybe pot, cigarettes, alcohol, and it gets progressively worse as time goes on. So I think that's about it for me for right now. I'll give this to Joan.
Hi everybody, my name is Joan, and I work with Lori here at Spark. Now she's the smart one, and I tend to get a little bit of laryngitis, so Lori's my statistic woman. So I just wanted to share a little bit of experience and in my life with drugs. Okay, my husband and I both have addiction problems, and we have a son probably about your age. And at a young age, he started, smoking pot. Because there's nothing wrong with smoking pot, is there? Is there anything wrong with smoking pot? No. It's going to be a big issue as it becomes legalized. But Lori and I believe there is something wrong with smoking pot, don't we? It tends to, I did a paper for school, I'm in school, graduate school, on youth and addiction. And it tends to be the gateway drug. It used to be that alcohol was the #1 choice because it was available. It was in the house. Everybody's mom and dad had at least a bottle or a beer or something for them to try. But studies show that the younger you are when you start to use drugs or any substance, the more addicted the more risk you are for addiction, the more addicted you will become, because it changes the structure, like Lori was saying, in your brain. You tend not to make good choices, which lead to a lot of the consequences like teenage pregnancy, HIV, Hep C. I worked for 10 years in Schenectady County Jail. I still technically am per diem at Rensselaer County Jail, and I have seen a cycle through the jail to the rehab, from the back to the jail to the rehab, over and over again. So many people, and a few of those people, and I'm not going to get all mushy now because I will start to cry, have died of an overdose. And I've known these people for years. I've known them so well and their problems and their struggles that they almost feel like they're related to me, because you just see them and you feel for them and you kind of get to know what they're going through. I have never been addicted to opiates. I had other addiction problems, and now, even in my family with my husband and myself, what we thought that we could prevent by, our recovery, has led to my son in a program now, and he'll be there the 26th this month, a year, and then he will stay there because it will backed up another maybe 5 or 6 months and go to Brooklyn, and then he will stay there another year and a half and transition out. That, to me, is the way that youth recovery needs to be once addicted to drugs. Because those changes in the brain, when your brain is still growing, are so severe, you never learn to begin with how to cope with problems, socialize with people, and now all of a sudden they take a drug away that you've been using to cope, and you're raw. You've got nowhere to go. You don't know what to do. I'm sad, I get really emotional when I start thinking about my son, but I'm really grateful that I don't have to lay awake at night and worry about him anymore. I don't have to worry about him driving a car, killing himself for somebody else. He was taking Xanax and all these pills. Things are not the way they were when I was young. The drugs are different now. Everybody out there thinks they're a chemist, and they're putting things in these drugs that bring you back for more. But not only that, that could kill you on the first use. On the first use. It's scary. It's really scary, and a lot of young people are dying, and we're seeing more and more young people in our rehab, and I'm seeing them in the jail, and these 30-day programs aren't working for them. They're not working. So a way to prevent that is just never picking up that drug. Learning to be with positive people who tend to be negative, that always that hater, always that downer. Just try and, if they don't come up, if you can't energize them and motivate them, then, you need to know when it's time to walk away. Whether that be a close friend, an aunt, or somebody who's doing something that's not right. You can do what you can do to get them help, but you're not going to save them. You'll be brought down first. And the internet, all the internet parties and people ordering drugs online from the dark web, getting deliveries. Lori and I have heard of many things that we could never imagine. There are so many ways to access this, today. But there are very little ways to access recovery for people. It's getting more and more difficult because the rehabs are filling up, especially around this time of the year. There's not enough rehabs. And they're not in there long enough. They're just out, they start, and then they relapse, and then they look to go back again, and they can't go back in because it's too soon. And they feel like a failure, and then that causes them to use. So, Lori and I always say Lori and I, we work together and we're like this team, so we're like one, are very passionate about not only opiate abuse, but any abuse, and especially in this population, because we feel like if we can help prevent it, then there will be so many lives saved, and there'll be so many people whose families and people themselves can go on to be what they were really meant to be, what their real passion is. And I always tell kids, find out what your passion is. Finish school. Just find out that one thing that you really, really love, and just go for it. Just go for it. Go to college. Not everybody's books on, but there's always something in the area of your interest that you can do. And the more you do it, you just become more, you just fill up with it and make a difference. And that will help you. It will help with self-esteem. It will help with making good decisions, critically thinking. And I find that helping other people is what really helps me to go on with my mission. And that's part, you know, I talk to people and encourage them to stay with drugs. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Anthony, and I am a recovering addict. I'm in Hope House, and I started using drugs when I was about 11 years old. I started smoking weed, and then I started drinking, and by 16 I was using opiates, and I broke my ankle, so the doctor prescribed me opiates, and I quickly got addicted to them. And then I started using heroin, and heroin takes everything from you. I lost my kids, I lost jobs, lost family, homeless. Heroin brings you to actually any opiate brings you to a dark place that nobody should see. And it hurts a lot. There's a lot of pain. It might feel good while you're using it, but in the end, it's very painful. And I've been in 5 rehabs, and each time I got out, I started using, not even a week later, I'd be using again. That's how sickening this opioid addiction is. It tells you can keep doing it, tells you everything's okay, but it's not. So, I have friends that overdose from it, and I've overdosed from it more than once. And, I have a son, and he was born addicted to heroin because I couldn't stop using. Because I couldn't help, I couldn't stop my girlfriend from using because I was the one going to work. I was the one going to buy the heroin, and I was the one who kept, using heroin together. And, you always tell yourself, oh, I won't, I told myself I would never shoot up. And that quickly happened, very fast. I was shooting up. And, it's a deadly thing. Very deadly. And, I grew up with drugs around me. I knew what drugs were at the age of 7. I have a lot of guilt from drugs. You forget feelings. You have no feelings when you're using opiates. Nothing matters. The only thing that matters is getting that next one. Getting that next high. You'll rob from anybody. Stick up people. Do whatever it takes to get that next one. You could be broke and find the next one. And it's very, you do some very grimy things, very dirty things. And I just hope that nobody in this room actually wants to go and use, because nobody ever said when they're a kid, I'm going to grow up to be a drug addict. Nobody said that. It's just, it's a bad life to live. I told myself, I could sell drugs. Start doing that. Start using. I told myself I could sell crack. Couldn't do that. Start using. You can't sell anything when you're an addict, because you're an addict to all drugs, not just one thing. But yeah, my son, he was addicted to heroin, and he had to stay in the hospital for 3 weeks, and the doctors had to wean him off of morphine. And because he was addicted to heroin, I lost custody of him. And I hope nobody in this room has to know what that feels like. That's a very painful thing. But I am very glad that I have my girlfriend's parents, because they have custody of him. If I didn't have them, my son would be in the system, like I was. I grew up from 11 to 18, I was in and out of group homes, juvie, and I feel like there's more drugs in those places than out in the streets. They're a lot easier to get. And I don't know, it's just, opiates are a very rough thing to go through. And I hope none of you have to experience any of the pain that I've been through. So keep your head up, keep one foot in front of the other, and just keep telling yourself, I won't pick up. Because every addict knows, one is too many and 1,000 is never enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing. For those of you who think it is easy to stand up in a room full of strangers to bare your soul like that, all I can say is that, you know, you're in the fight of your life, and people that are sitting in this room are bearing witness to that struggle. That struggle is one that can, in fact, be avoided. And here is a person who's sitting here telling you exactly what is going to happen. He doesn't have a crystal ball. He's not studying information or data. This is his life, and he's sharing his life with all of you today, which I think is incredible, definitely courageous, and we are, look, man, I'm pulling for you. Yeah. I will say this, David Graham, David, Orville, you're not supposed to sit me next to a man with an afro, the same afro that I had 30 years ago, because this is painful for me right here. I'm sitting here watching, I'm like, I know what he did to Pickett today. You know?
We need pictures. We need pictures.
Well, he was warm walking in the building. Me, on the other hand, you know, look, there's a reason why we're all here this morning and engaging in this conversation. And I want to make it perfectly clear that this is a conversation, because there's nothing I can say that is as important as what's been said here today. I've come at this from an entirely different space. You know, it's my job in working with federal agencies, state agencies, local agencies. It's my job to stem the flow of fentanyl and other drugs, heroin, from coming into our communities. And I can talk about how prevalent that is. I can talk about cases, but I don't think that that's really what you are here to hear today. Here is the reality. When the first question was asked by our moderator, how many people in the room have been infected by heroin or opioids, there was a number of you that stood, and then there was a number of you that did not stand. So here is the inconvenient truth. If we came back here again, same time next year, same people in this room, you're going to see double the number of people standing. And if we come back here the year after that, it's going to be every single one of you standing. Because the question that was asked was how many of you have either been personally or indirectly impacted by opioid abuse. And the truth is, this is more prevalent today than at any other point in time in history. There's a reason for that. As we sit here today, there are more people in the United States of America that die as a result of overdose, which I shouldn't be using that term, than people who pass away and perish in car crashes. Now you got to take a minute to soak that in. Right? We have more people that die as a result of toxic levels of opioids in their system than car crashes. And so the question is, how did we get here? And more importantly, how do we get out of where we are? Well, the most simple answer of how we get out is by more people doing exactly what we're doing here today, because we got to talk about it, right? See, the reason why the opioid abuse has had such a dreadful impact on our country, it wasn't because there were a couple of cats, on the corner of 1st Street, 2nd Street in different parts of the country that all of a sudden started, dealing and getting people addicted to heroin. That's not what happened, right? What happened, in the vast majority of times, is exactly as Anthony had described it. It starts out as an injury on a soccer field, on a football field, and you go off to the emergency room where, in order to ease your pain, you're given the most powerful of all drugs, and it was done with the best of intentions, right? Except these products are so powerful that once you leave the hospital, your body just craves more. And why? It's because the power of fentanyl, the power of opioids, is greater than anything we've seen on planet Earth, right? When it was said, you're going to like it, yeah, that is the inconvenient truth. We can't, as legitimate, honest people, sit back and say, oh, hey, stay away from this because it's just bad. And yeah, every consequence, everything that flows from addiction is awful and terrible. But the reality is, the reason why people are doing it, the reason why these products grab a hold of certain sites in your brain and won't let go, is because it is the most pleasurable of all experiences. Imagine something so great that you would cross your mother or your father, or that you would choose to be outside in the middle of the winter than be in a home with your family. Imagine something so great that you lose everything in exchange for it. And when you can imagine that, that's when you begin to understand and appreciate the power of addiction. Why are you here? Well, you're here for obvious reasons, right? You're here to listen to the testimony of the people here today because we don't want you ever to come within, 1,000 yards of this. But the other reality is it doesn't matter what profession you choose to engage yourself in, you are going to be dealing with the consequences of this crisis throughout your professional career. You don't have to be police. You don't have to be prosecutors. You don't have to be chemists. Those are circles that are far too close to the battle. We're talking about whether you choose to be in financing and banking, whether you choose to be the biggest cottage industry right now that is growing in leaps and bounds is foster care. And do you know why? So many people, parents who are perishing as a result of overdoses, that their kids have to be raised in foster care. That's the biggest cottage industry that's growing around this issue. And so you guys will have, as you're growing up, as you're going through, whether it's going through secondary education, interning, you're going to be surrounded by this issue. And so how do we get ahead of it? It's peer-to-peer engagement, right? I think the purpose of this today isn't so you come and get a nice breakfast and then go home with a hoverboard. Trust me. The purpose of this activity is for you to engage with your colleagues. It's for you to understand the significance, the importance, the deadliness of this thing, for you to engage your peer groups. This should be something that if you see, or even when you go to the hospital, and I've had the occasion where I've gone to the hospital and I've asked for Tylenol, or I've asked for Advil, because I don't want to put anything in my body that is that powerful. And we can talk a little bit more about this as we proceed. So, where are we? How did we get here? Here in a nutshell. It used to be that marijuana was considered the gateway drug. If you smoke marijuana, you're going to smoke heroin, or you're going to inject heroin. The reality is, the pharmaceutical companies got us to this space, right? It's the pharmaceutical companies that produced this product in mass quantities, that hired pretty people that walk into doctors' offices to pitch them on prescribing more of these products. Those pretty people got those doctors in exchange for golf bags and golf clubs to prescribe more of these products. So now that we really didn't have to do much when you go into the emergency room other than walk out, you know, with a little bottle full of pills enough to last you 60 days when all you had was an ankle that you twisted that could have been repaired in less than 3 days with some Tylenol. That's what's driven us and gotten us to this point, okay? We have more amazing methodologies of getting product from China into our country. It's not just coming from trucks in the southern border or the northern border or through ships. You can actually order products and get it through, delivered by your postal carrier or UPS. It is the Amazon of illegal death, right? You can get this stuff delivered to your house. So we are tackling this issue. We are combating this issue on several fronts, right? It takes a collective effort of all federal agencies, state agencies, and local police and prosecutors at every level to combat this issue. Are we winning? For every truckload that we get off the street, for every kilo that we remove from a community, there is a 9-year-old who discovers their mom, you know, in a bathtub having overdosed. These are stories that are taking place every single week. And the worst part of it all is this. Chipotle. Everybody ever been to Chipotle? No. Okay. Chipotle does a much more effective job of removing bad lettuce from their thousands and thousands of stores than we are at this moment of recalling dangerous products on the street. Anybody have a penny? Okay. There are products right now that are so powerful that are out on the street that if you look at a penny and you look at the hair, and I got to go back to the hair, right? I apologize for that. It's just my thing, man. It's my thing. Enough fentanyl just on the hairline of Abe Lincoln can cause death. And for people who are out there considering going out and scoring or buying something, think about this. Is the guy that's standing outside or in a car or in his house, is that guy wearing a white lab coat? You're going to trust the math skills of a dude who is handing you a product through a window? You're going to trust the chemistry and scales and math skills of someone like that when I've just described to you that this product, enough of it, it's on the hair of Abe Lincoln on a penny, can kill you? You've got to be crazy to take that kind of chance, right? So, can't sit here and continue to tell you how bad this stuff is because it's bad. What I can do is tell you that it doesn't matter what profession that you're going in, considering any area of study, you will be impacted by this issue. Learn as much as you can about it, but don't just learn and walk out of here with a say no approach. Learn and educate and save lives and help people. You can do that by engaging and having conversations. And by the way, That hoverboard over there, if you look anything like me, you'd stay away from it. That stuff will kill you, man. I tried it a couple times. And if you're old like me, you probably can't play the PS4 because there's too many buttons. From the Atari. Anybody up the Atari generation? Yeah. Thank you. One stick, right? One stick, one button? One stick, one button. I think the odds of you winning will increase exponentially depending on the number of questions that you ask. This is about engagement and asking and getting answers, hopefully. Thank you.
Okay, the funny guy's back. I know these old folks probably bored you guys to death. I saw some of you looking around, talking, like wondering, like, when are they gonna stop talking about this stuff? Because I don't want to hear it. How many people here don't want to hear what we're talking about? It's okay to raise your hand. Really, it really is. Higher. I want to talk to people who don't want to hear what we got to talk about. Don't be embarrassed. It's okay. Nobody. Everybody wants to hear what we're talking about. So, before I continue with what we're doing here, I think that it's necessary that you guys know the definition of what opioids is. I think that's really important because just in case you didn't learn it in science class, you didn't learn it from school, you don't have a class that tells you about it, I think one of the nurses can gladly define what opioids is. Would you be willing to do that? I only need 2 minutes. Come on, teach. Thank you.
It's from the poppy plant. And it's gotta get my statistics for there. Yeah. Heroin is 100 times more powerful than morphine. Anybody who's ever had their appendix out, if you go to the emergency room, a lot of times they would give you some IV morphine, you know, and your head would feel real funny. Well, just imagine 100 times that. And in addition to what David Swords was saying, with the fentanyl, just even touching that, if you'd seen the articles in the paper, a lot of the police, they were touching it and they were actually having reactions from that, just physically touching that small amount. So, do you have anything to add, Logan?
Opioids are a very powerful drug. They can be smoked, injected, sniffed. When you smoke or inject them, they are more addicting. Any drug that is smoked or injected is more addicting.
So, a lot of, you probably read the paper and you say, okay, you know, they're putting out all sorts of products out there that help people who are in crisis, overdosing, recover, right? And that was, I think, a few years ago when they introduced, his name's escaping me, naloxone. It was viewed as the, like, oh my goodness, we have a solution. All we have to do is get as much naloxone and give it to police, give it to first responders, and you know, when we come across someone who's overdosing, we can give people naloxone and boy, it'll get them out. Here's what naloxone does. Remember, you have certain pleasure centers in your brain. So morphine and heroin and opioids, they lock on to the pleasure centers of your brain, and it won't. The bind is so strong. It's stronger than anything. It's stronger than any other drug. That's why when we're talking about these products, understand this. This is the stuff that the medics carry in time of war. You understand what I'm talking about? Like, when you see war, combat, people shooting at each other, people blowing up, people losing limbs, like the medics come and give them a shot of morphine or very powerful drugs to ease the pain, right? So they can begin to do treatment. I had open heart surgery, right? And that's what I got when they opened up my chest. Do you understand how powerful a drug that is, right? So this stuff is so powerful that when people take it and they overdose, people come along with naloxone, and what naloxone does is it frees that product from the binding site in your brain, right? So it just provides that temporary relief. It's almost like someone gives you a jolt of coffee. It's like someone throws a cold bucket of water, and the person who was in crisis all of a sudden wakes up, okay? Here's the problem. An opioid is a plant, right? It's a flower, it's a plant. It's processed to become the powder, the product that's injected. An opiate, like fentanyl, that's made in a lab. So someone studies the molecular structure of an opioid, creates the same molecular structure, but without all of the organic products, right? So naloxone won't have the same effect on the opiate, fentanyl, that it does on the opioid, okay? Just so I can scare you a little bit more, those same chemists, if you think about the business, right, of the drug dealing of these products, does it cost money to grow a plant? Anybody? Yes, it costs money to grow a plant. Does it cost money to process that plant into the finished product? Yes, it costs money. So why do you think the dealers are shifting towards opiates, fentanyl, than opioids? Two reasons. Can anybody give me yes. It is cheaper, less overhead, right? Very good. What else? Faster to produce. So if you're in business, right? If you're in business, if you can lower your overhead and get your product to market quicker, you're winning, aren't you? Yeah. Okay, so give me another reason why it's more favorable to be a chemist and to synthesize than to grow the product organically. Less work? Yes?
Indoors.
Indoors. You don't need acres and acres of real estate, correct? All right. What else?
You can make it more addictive.
You can make it more addictive. Yes, sir. You can manipulate. I can't even believe I'm going to use this. I haven't said covalent bond since I was like in the 8th grade. You certainly can manipulate, right, and make the product much stronger. There is a product in Europe, and we've seen it here in the U.S., but you find it more in Europe, and you find it in Canada. It's called Great Death. And that fentanyl product is the strongest that is believed to be out there in the world. They call it Great Death. They also call it crocodile, because if you use it enough, your skin begins to scale and people look like crocodiles. That's why they call it crocodile as a product. Now, here is the challenge for law enforcement. We define what an opioid is, right? We define what it is in our laws. We know what it is. Fentanyl we had to add because the chemical structure of fentanyl was a little different, right? So anytime there's a manipulation in the chemistry, it's called an analog. So right now, all those people that are sitting in these labs that are making these illegal products are all changing their analogs just slightly to give you the same kind of reaction. But they're changing the analogs just slightly because the lawmakers haven't caught up to it yet. And so you could literally be carrying 1,000 pounds of like this deadly product in your car, and when you get stopped with it, as it's happened, because it's not on the books as being illegal, there's nothing we can do, right? So understand what's happening out in the world. The chemists are creating products by manipulating analogs faster than lawmakers are able to add it, to the schedules to make these products illegal. That's the challenge that we're experiencing right now in the world of law enforcement.
Okay, I'll use this for now. Get that ready. Okay, we're going to break in a few minutes. I'm not going to hold everybody up. I know you guys would like to walk around for a minute, laugh, joke, come back. We're going to do some workshop stuff. We're going to get you guys involved. So, as I was about to say, we're going to have some things that you guys can do. We're going to let you go in a few minutes. I just want to say one thing. I started out this discussion by asking if anyone had anyone affected by the use of opioids, and a few of you stood up. So now I have another question. And that question is, how many of you know someone, has been affected by someone who has been to jail based on the use of drugs? Now we got quite a few people standing up. You see the difference? Wow. So, thank you, you can sit down now. I can safely say to you that 65 to 75% of the folks who stood up, whose people or someone that they know that was affected by the use of drugs, but that was affected or been in any type of incarceration, got there based on the use of some type of drug. I'm pretty sure of that number. So let me just give you a little bit about me before I let you go. I am a recovering addict. Yeah, they don't look like me. They don't talk like me. I'm not nodding. I'm not doing any of the things that you think addicts normally do. I've been arrested 19 times. I have 8 felony convictions. I've been in every jail from New York City, from Rikers Island to Sing Sing prison. Now am I making some sense? Are you paying attention to me now? Do you think that what I'm talking about is for jokes? I've been clean longer than most of you have been alive. I'd like to never see any of your parents have to go to a jail and sit behind a glass wall and try to talk to their son or daughter. I would definitely not like to see any of you be in a casket, because it's easier to be judged by 12 than to be carried by 6. Do you understand what I just said? You may see David and a DA and a lawyer and get an opportunity to not have to go to jail, but you don't get an opportunity to come back from a casket. Am I making sense? What we're talking about here is very, very serious, because most of you will say, that's not going to happen to me. Most of you are going to say that the person that it happened to, that's them, it's not me. I'm here to tell you that I sold enough drugs to make everybody in this room make sure that it was you. Am I making my point clear now? What you think that people who use drugs, who sell drugs, beat up people about drugs, don't look like who I am standing here telling you about, I am that person. Everything that you could possibly think of about somebody who uses drugs, I have been that person. Excuse me. I don't come from your nice little town of Albany or Guilderland or Bethlehem or Saratoga or any of those places. I was born and raised in Harlem. I lived in a project most of my life. I've stole, I've beaten up people, I've thrown people off of roofs. I've done all kinds of things that you could never believe. Am I making my point clear? Don't think that it won't happen to you. Not for 1 minute, because I was one of those people who said, it's not going to happen to me. Y'all think this is not serious? It is. If it's not you, it'll be your sister, your brother, your cousin, your nephew, your best friend. You'll find yourself crying at a funeral and not knowing how the heck did I get to this funeral, because it wasn't supposed to be like this. So don't think us old people are just sitting up here wasting our time talking about this type of stuff, because we'd like to help you save your doggone life. Hello? Is everybody paying attention now? You have to excuse me, but I like to have fun. And what I'm talking about is not fun. But because I've been through the miserableness, I've been through the despair, I've been through the despondent part of this, I am sharing with you that you don't have to experience what I've experienced in order to keep a smile on your face. So, with that, 10 minutes? Okay. So let's just say it's 5 after 10 now. You guys can take a break. Please be back by 10:15, and we will start doing the second part of what we're doing.